Today we will be putting these two together, these beautiful things. We'll be putting these two together while I talk about somebody evil. And the person we will be talking about today is Rosemary West. This person, okay? Don't mind me. I'm sorry if you see me looking down. I'm looking down at the directions or the instructions on how to build these two. And then at the end, we'll put them in a vase. A vase. So, where do I begin? Rosemary West was born November 29, 1954. To this day, she is 67. She was born into a very toxic household. Her parents are both mentally ill. Her father is schizophrenic, and her mother just has bouts of severe depression. And her father isn't a regular schizophrenic, he's a paranoid schizophrenic, and that has really took a toll on Mary's mother. At one point, Mary grew up with 6 siblings, and her father would basically abuse and bully the whole family and Mary. I feel like especially Mary, because Mary was slower than the other kids, if that makes sense. While in school, she was a little slower because during her mother's pregnancy, they gave her mother electroshock therapy to help with her depression, but it only affected Mary. Well, I won't say it only affected Mary. It probably affected her mother too, but they only speak about how it affected Mary in this case. As I was talking about Mary in school, since her mom went through the electroshock while she was pregnant, the aftermath of the electroshock as Mary got older is that she would be very aggressive and have crazy outbursts as a child, and that was something that always hurt her later on in life. See, we're already done one. Eventually, Rosemary's mother ends up, I'm sorry, her parents' names are Daisy and William Letts. Sorry that I forgot to add that in. I'm suffering from allergies, so if I'm a little sorry. Her parents do end up separating, and Mary does go with her mother at one point, but for some reason Mary ends up moving back home with her father, who was abusing and bullying her at one point. And the problem here is that Mary was seeking attention sexually, and basically they say that she was doing this for a cry for help. She would walk around the house naked. Sadly, they report that she touched her little brother, and she would also talk to older men. Soon she was actually having sex with them as well. And around this time is when Mary met Fred. Immediately, Mary became intimate with Fred, and soon, she became intimate with Fred. Her father didn't approve of it at all, but Mary still went on with the relationship regardless of what her father said. And eventually, Mary became pregnant with Fred's baby. But at this time, Fred went away for fine evasion, went to prison for fine evasion. And Mary was forced to basically take care of his 2 kids. And Mary is still a teenager at this point. And while he's in prison, her first daughter, Heather, is born in 1970. And I'm pretty sure you're wondering, who is Fred? Well, Fred was born September 29, 1941, in Marrow, England. His neighbors said that he was a very nice, sweet young man, but he was very, how can I explain it? He was very cheeky, so I'm guessing that means that he was like very mouthy. He wasn't the nicest guy around. But they said he was a nice boy, so I don't know. That contradicts what they said, so I'm not sure. Fred honestly can be his own story because Fred actually ends up getting into a lot of trouble with young girls and a lot of petty crime that's like questionable, that you would be like, now why would you do that? Like, why? But back to Rose. Remember I said that she has aggressive outbursts, and in this situation with Fred's children, allegedly they assume that she has this aggressive outburst and she kills one of Fred's oldest daughter, Charmaine, in 1971. Remember, Rose is still a teenager at this point. While everything is going on, she's probably like, what, 17 at this point. Rosemary did is she hid the body of his daughter until he got home from prison. And once Fred was home from prison, she let him know what happened, and Fred ends up burying the body of his daughter and taking off all the identifying markers on her, which is crazy because this young girl, his daughter, has her own mother, and her own mother starts to come looking for her. And what happens is that Fred ends up strangling and killing her mother and taking off the identifying markers of her, toes, fingernails, skin, any birthmarks, anything that could make her, identify her body. He ends up taking those off as well with her, and then he ends up burying her body too. Fred is just out here being crazy. So basically, they both now have a body under both of their belts. Crazy, right? For your daughter to go missing and then for her mother to come looking for her, it's one of those like, hello? Like, what happened to my kid? And then I end up getting strangled. It's like, what the fuck is going on, right? So, after they basically kill two people separately, but Fred ends up burying the bodies, Fred and Rose get married. Huh, right? They end up getting married, and at this time, Rose does actually have their second daughter, and her name is, I believe, May, and she came June of that year, which they were married January 1972. That's when May was born, that June. And to honestly keep up with money in the house, Rose ended up starting to sell her body for money to keep up with, bills and making sure they just had stuff in the house. But Fred, on the other hand, he was creating sexual acts against young girls in the community, and and those sexual acts were like bondage and violence against women. So I'm assuming that he was beating women, and while Mary is out here trying to help support the family at a young age. But this is when things start to take a turn. They have their first victim, and their first victim, sadly, is Anne Marie. This is Fred's daughter, but Mary's stepdaughter. Fred ends up violently raping his daughter, and Mary holds her down during the torture and the rape. They basically, after raping her and beating her, they beat her again and tell her if she ever tells anybody that they'll basically kill her. She keeps it a secret for many, many years. Their second victim is Caroline Owens, and this is their nanny who helps take care of the kids. And what happened is one day they just basically lock her in the basement so she has nowhere to go. And Fred raped, tortured, and beat her, and Rosemary helped hold her down basically throughout the beatings and everything else. So Rosemary had a hand in everything, as you can see. But it really makes me wonder, is this because Rosemary was, well, I mean, as time goes on, she starts to get older and everything. But it makes me wonder, is she trying to do this stuff to make, Fred happy, to make sure that he's happy because, she's a young girl. Also, they said that Rosemary was basically slow, so maybe he took advantage of her not knowing what the right and wrong things to do to women. Maybe he took advantage of that, you know what I mean? Maybe he knew, oh, she's not like everybody else, so I can really use her mental health or her mental capability to my advantage. Crazy thing is that Caroline actually ends up escaping the house, going to the authorities, right? Going to the authorities and telling them everything that happens. And it's crazy. Fred is able to, and like it goes all the way to court, but Fred is able to smooth talk his way out of basically jail time for the rape and the beating of Caroline. And also, Caroline was too afraid to testify, so they really couldn't, go after him the way that they wanted to. And it ended up him having to just pay a few fines for beating and raping her because supposedly she was too ill, she was too out of her mind to give consent. But it doesn't stop there for their victims. They actually end up raping, beating, and killing over a period of decades with 10 more victims after their nanny. And 2 of those victims are 15-year-old schoolgirls. After all these victims, their last victim is their daughter that they made together, Heather. In 1987, Heather is their last victim. What happened is that Heather ends up confessing and telling her friend about the abuse that is going on in her house. And sadly, after Heather told her friend about the abuse and Fred and Rose ended up finding out, they ended up murdering and dismembering their daughter, and then they made their son Steven dig his own sister's grave, which is already traumatizing. How can you let your kids be like involved in your crimes? Like why do that? Why do that to them, Like, why make them suffer and be traumatized because you decided to kill one of your kids, This is filicide, as we can see. Remember, filicide is when a parent or parents kill their children. Eventually, a detective starts to catch on to what's going on in the house, and he actually ends up going forward with the search and seizure of what's going on in the house and what really is happening. His name is Constable Hazel Savage. He is the one that led the investigation and ended up actually arresting Rosemary and Fred for all their crimes and murders against young women and their kids. The end actually, after they're arrested, is surely there. Immediately, Wes is arrested December 13, 1994, and he's charged with 12 counts of murder. Yes, 12 counts of murder. 12 counts. But sadly, Fred takes the easy way out and he ends up hanging himself in his cell. But Rosemary, shortly after that, she actually goes on trial on October 3rd, 1995, charged with 10 separate counts of murder. She is found guilty on all of them and she is sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. And the crazy part is she's still alive to this day. To this day, she is about 67 years old. And a crazy thing is that she was actually about to marry some rock star drummer at one point. He decided to pull out of the marriage because he was getting publicity, but it wasn't the right publicity for him. It was like he lost gigs, his job, he was kicked out of his band, all because of him wanting to marry this woman that basically killed her kids and helped kill 10 other, individuals. So they said, no, you have to get out. But also what happens is that the West house is actually torn down because people in the neighborhood don't want it around. So they tear it down and they make it into a path that you can walk into town. Look, guys, look, we are finished with all of our Legos. Look, I'm scared to put these in here. Oh no, it's stuck. Ugh. Oh my gosh, y'all. This is like freaking gorgeous. Can y'all see this? This is gorgeous. Like, look at this. I will be posting a picture on my Instagram. This is the last one. Look. Now. Because, oh my God. This is... Okay, these are now completed. Look at this. Look. We now have a bouquet of Legos. Oh, but listen, these are not the only Lego plants we're going to do. A bonsai tree in Legos as well. Crafts and true crime is what we do here. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm here every Wednesday, and I will be seeing you guys next week. Bye. Ever since the day that you